I had a funny thought today.
Let's hear it.
If someone
Is it actually funny or is it just funny to you?
It's just funny to me. If someone is listening to our...
Nobody's listening to us.
Okay, mistake number one. But if someone happens to turn us on, I'm going to pretend I didn't.
Someone happens to turn the
podcast on. And they listen to our episodes back to back. They're going to go from our last episode ending with me trash talking black and white films immediately into it's such a character development change into
Don't try and play this
loving.
off as you being a fully realized character.
No. I still don't think action movies hold up, but dramas.
Look, I know that for 24 hours you've been doing mental gymnastics trying to rectify these things, but
the monster that is my past self.
That's right. Starting to reckon with it already. Hello, and welcome to the Picture Show with Austin and Phil Rood. I am Phil Rood, and I am the dad.
And I'm Austin Rood. I'm the son. This week we watched a movie, and then we're going to talk about it. It's what we do every week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I'm into saying things in weird ways today.
Wow. Well, you're just home from work.
That's true.
Blowing off some steam a little bit.
Sick of kids.
Yeah. Well, what else you got going on? What have you been watching, reading, listening to?
New this week is WandaVision. That just came out last week.
Yep.
3 episodes in. Pretty good. Although I did hear someone made a good point that the pilot episode does not follow traditional pilot rules, establishing the story or the characters, because it basically falls into the Marvel flaw of you have to be caught up to understand it.
Well, yeah. I mean, these are existing characters.
Right, but if you're trying to create a TV show, you should still be reintroducing the characters so that this could be a jumping on point.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, that's my big complaint. I mean, that's Marvel through the comics and everything over the last 40, 50 years is if you're not, where do I jump on is the kind of the thing.
I feel like with a TV show, though, it's more egregious. Compared to
maybe a little bit, yeah.
Compare it to Luke Cage or Daredevil.
Or The Mandalorian. It plays off of existing Star Wars, but you don't have to have it.
Yeah, that's actually a better comparison.
Just as far as TV shows go. But all the new crop of TV shows don't feel like they're going to be standalone at all. So, you know what I mean? With all of them spinning off of The Mandalorian, like we talked about. It just being a backdoor pilot for all these things.
Yeah, Disney is just becoming weird.
Yeah. Well, they're an IP farm, more or less. So it just, I think, kind of goes with the territory. Yeah, I saw a little bit of it when you were watching WandaVision the other day. And I know there's a whole, other thing going on. But the bulk of the episode just being a 70s era sitcom, complete with bad comedy. I'm just I don't know. It is nothing that appeals to me.
See, that episode, of course
I'm going to say this. They're in the Brady Bunch house. It's the weird, I'm having a baby. And,
they did, the intro was Brady Bunch.
Right.
But I think they did the 50s and 60s better. The 50s episode is really good. It's our boss is coming over for dinner. We have to impress.
That's what I'm saying, though.
It's silly, but it's fun.
It's all comedy of that era, and it's all the same tropes of that era. And I've seen all that before, and I don't. At a certain point, it's sort of even with something like Stranger Things, that has all the 80s fan service. At a certain point, they're just pointing at it too much. And it's go to the plot. Go to the story. Stop pointing out all of this. Aren't we clever for doing an I Love Lucy episode, but doing it with Marvel characters, essentially? Like, it just... I don't... I'm not judging it because I haven't seen it. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't appeal. The concept of it doesn't appeal to me.
You have no desire to see it.
Right. That's why. I just am kind of... Plus, they're like the two lamest characters out of the MCU.
I like Vision.
He's fine, I guess.
All right.
He's just fine.
That's all I have for this week.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. What about you?
I've been watching Better Call Saul. I started... Keith Gala recommended a show on HBO Max called Warrior.
Okay.
About a Chinese immigrant around the turn of the century, late 1800s, somewhere in that time period, who basically falls in with like Chinese organized crime. And it's like a kung fu, like martial arts style show. A lot in the style of like old Bruce Lee movies, where there's a plot, but it's kind of just to get you to the next big fight scene and everything like that.
This is a new show?
Yeah. I think there's a season of it on HBO Max. I just watched the first episode. I enjoyed it. When I get through a couple of other things, like I need to get into Korra, so we can do an episode on that. So when I get a couple things for a podcast cleared, I'm going to go back to it and check it out.
You can only watch so much at one time.
Yeah, when we're working on limited time period here, so... but yeah, I enjoyed that, but that's about all I've got. And I got a new graphic novel this week called Bird Goes West about Charlie Parker in his time living in California and bringing his jazz to the West Coast and introducing people to it there.
That sounds cool.
It is cool. It's told from a lot of different people's perspectives. I don't have the author's name here. I should have had the book in here, but he is apparently a music educator. So he basically just took this thing he loved and made this comic book about it, and it's pretty sweet.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it so far.
We should put it in like the description or something.
Yeah, I'll drop a Powell's or a Amazon link in there where people can check that out.
Who needs to remember names of things when you can
I know. I really am sort of like, yeah, it is as easy as dropping a link in there. But other than that, I just, been catching up for the show. So why don't you tell us what don't tell us. I know. And so does everybody who's seen the description of this episode.
Well, why don't you all pretend and I'll tell you what we watched.
For those of you who blindly turn the podcast on.
Those who are being force-fed this in a dark dungeon.
Yeah, if this is the person in the cubicle next to you is listening to this and you didn't see the episode title, Austin's going to fill you in right now.
It's 12 Angry Men. Hold your shock. This week we watched the 1957 courtroom drama 12 Angry Men, in which a jury holdout attempts to prevent a miscarriage of justice by forcing his colleagues to reconsider the evidence. The film stars Henry Fonda, Lee J. Cobb, Jack Klugman, Jack Warden, and Ed Begley. It is written by Reginald Rose, who also wrote the teleplay a few years earlier, and was directed by Sidney Lumet.
Sidney Lumet is a prolific director. He directed Dog Day Afternoon. I should have pulled this up earlier because this IMDb page is full of people that you know, even if you can't tell where you know them from. A lot of character actors of the 1950s. But like some of them I would look up on IMDb. I'm like, I know that guy. Where do I know? Like Jack Warden. And then you pull up his IMDb and you realize, oh, I know that guy as as an older actor. Like things that,
Right.
that
This
I
is
watched.
in his past.
Right. Things that I watched growing up. He would be like the old guy in these comedies and things like that. And so it's really weird to see them as much younger men in this one.
Interesting. I know none of these actors. Which shouldn't come as a surprise, but
Yeah, it's they're of a different time. Henry Fonda, is probably like clearly the biggest star in this movie.
who does he play?
He's the main character.
The holdout?
Yes,
Okay.
the guy who's the original holdout of this jury. And I even when I knew who he was, he had been in like on Golden Pond, like as an old man. So all of this, and I think the other thing I've seen him in, he's in like a lot of westerns, and he was in The Grapes of Wrath. He's Tom Joad in The Grapes of Wrath, the movie.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard of
You
it.
should. It's very good, and I did see this piece of trivia for the movie yesterday, where basically Henry Fonda did not get paid for this movie. He was supposed to get like a percentage of the profits, and this movie didn't turn a profit.
Really?
So he essentially never got paid, but he still listed this as one of the most important pieces of work that he did.
I'm shocked that this didn't have, like... It seems like it would. It seems like it would have been a big movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this is
Maybe it's a hard to sell sort of thing.
I mean, if you look at very well done dramas that are done today, they're competing against Marvel movies and these big franchise movies. Maybe it was something in this time. I mean, we just watched The Hidden Fortress, which was a big action movie at the time. Westerns were really big. Science fiction was starting to come into being a little bit more. Maybe it was
that's
up
true.
against big blockbusters, and the fact that a television version had been done just a few years before, maybe people saw it there and were like, oh, I don't need to. I don't know. There's any number of reasons that movies fail. But I think over time, this has become sort of a classic movie.
I think so. I mean, they remade it.
In the 90s?
What, in the... Okay,
Yep.
90s? All right. I wasn't sure if it was 80s. But yeah, like, if it's good enough to be remade later on, and apparently still be good in the remake, then I think that says something.
I'm eventually going to watch the remake, because there's like, in looking for it, like, you're seeing all these good reviews and stuff of it. And it's got a good cast. I think Ed Harris is in it, Jack Lemmon. Mm-hmm. These older character actors were in that version of it because it's such a, I think, respected film.
Right. Well, that's what last episode I said, like, oh, I found it on YouTube, but it was the newer version.
Okay.
It's free on YouTube, so...
And the TV version that was done before this movie, like by a few years, I think it was done for a TV show called Studio One, which was essentially like a play on TV. That's I think on Amazon Prime. I think you can watch it free if you have Prime.
Okay. Is it like one go?
It's like an hour long. It's like 45 minutes or an hour. Yeah.
Okay.
As opposed to it's about half the length of this.
Interesting.
But you picked this movie. Was there a reason that you picked it? Do you have a history with this movie? Was it something you just wanted to watch?
I actually wrote this movie.
Wow!
I don't know if you know. Yeah.
It's very impressive.
No, I watched this movie in 7th grade. 7th grade civics class. We were doing, I assume, I don't remember, but I assume it was like the courtroom procedures, going over the different aspects of that.
Judicial system as a whole, kind
Right.
of. Yeah.
Juries, and then we watched this movie, and I remember everyone kind of groaned when they found out it was black and white. It was like an up and down, like, yay, we're watching a movie. Oh, it's black and white. Oh, it's related to the subject. But then, and I was going along with everyone. I was like, yeah, this probably will be boring. And I just remember by the time class was over, I was like, wait, I'm in class? I was so absorbed in this movie. So I wanted to see if it would hold up, because I couldn't really remember the details of this movie.
Right.
I had a suspicion, like, maybe this was just, it was the only thing on, so I just liked it because I had something to watch.
Because you weren't doing classwork.
Right.
It was, yes.
I was wrong. This movie is great.
That's awesome to hear. And I think that speaks to both sides of your argument last week that that new audiences have a hard time connecting with old movies. The reaction to seeing a black and white screen come on, turned off a lot of people. Mm-hmm. It's just hard to get people to sit down, but also the other side of it being, if you do sit down with an engaging old movie, like you find yourself, oh, I am the audience for this movie. Like,
right. And I think a lot of people, I don't think I was in the majority leaving the class. Like, I'm glad I watched that. I think a lot of people tune the movie out.
Sure.
But
it's
they're also 7th grade. Like, it's 13, 14-year-olds.
There's
I feel like we were a little young to be shown that. Like, it was age appropriate, but it was like, I feel like slightly more mature.
Maybe. There is nuance to this movie that a kid probably won't get, but I think it's a good idea to put some of these ideas into the younger people and educate. Like, this is what being being on trial is you're not supposed to bring this person's criminal record into this. You're not supposed to bring your personal prejudices into this. You're not supposed to prove them innocent. You're supposed to say guilty, or I can't say for sure guilty. You know what I mean?
Innocent until proven guilty.
These sort of hard to explain ideas about the weird gray area between innocence and guilt. I think this movie does it so well because they keep going back to, like, I don't have to think he's innocent. I just have to see if there's a reasonable doubt. We have to see if there's any chance that he's not guilty. And I like that they put right up front, like, if we just say guilty, we're killing this kid. We're putting him, he will go to the electric chair and die.
You have to be sure. Certainty.
Yes. Yeah. And the idea that this almost the entire jury is just surface level, yep, guilty, let's get out of here. Mm-hmm. It's shocking once you start breaking that down, and the turn of events through this movie is
I
crazy.
really love how they slowly the doubt creeps in, because, like, of course this movie, that's what it's about, but yes. Like to start out with, everyone thinks he's guilty, and he just keeps on hammering away at this story that the prosecution has put together.
Right.
Until it's like, none of this really holds up. None of this has weight.
You come to realize, like, how much stuff that's presented in a trial is possibly circumstantial. And this is sort of the flip side of a lot of legal dramas where we see things from, like, the lawyer's point of view. And lawyers are saying things like, we don't have to prove it, we just have to put this idea in a jury's head.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
they're playing to the jury.
They're playing to the jury and playing, anything like the client. Is it the client? Runaway Jury. These John Grisham kind of thrillers. Better Call Saul has a certain amount of this. Like, this idea of, like, we will select a jury of sympathetic, like, mothers, and we will put these ideas in of kids being harmed in, and, all of a sudden, they're talking about playing on prejudices of
It
a
perverts
jury.
the whole idea of a jury.
Absolutely. And this coming at it from the jury's point of view, where they start to more and more think critically. It's just such an interesting take on a legal drama where it's not about lawyers. It's about the men who are actually deciding, what the outcome of this trial is. Lawyers don't decide it. The jury decides it.
Right. I noticed there are themes present in this movie that aren't explicitly said. It's more like an example of, like, there's everyone. I feel like they all went into this trial like, oh, it's a murder trial, and they automatically assumed he's guilty. Or, like,
Right.
they kind of went in with that bias, and then everything that they were shown built upon that, which isn't what you should be doing in a court case. Like, kind of the way,
Right.
like in the beginning, you see in the small talk, a lot of the just, like, offhand remarks are sort of like, oh, yeah, well, I knew he was guilty. Like, it's
Right.
they're not basing this in evidence. It's just this idea that they entered the court with, and that was the lens they chose to view this case with.
Sure. And several of them actually, through the course of the conversation, sort of reveal their personal prejudice against this young Latino kid. Mm-hmm. That they have this prejudice against people who live in slums, immigrants, people who are not white. And I'd like to say that's a product of the time, but we all know that it's really not.
It's really not confined
very,
to that
very
time.
still relevant today.
I was surprised at how accurate and open and honest this movie was at kind of portraying that.
It does feel really progressive for the time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, the idea, the old man who's a immigrant. Mm-hmm. Like, probably my favorite character in
Nikola
this.
Tesla, pretty much.
Like, his whole demeanor about, saying things like, yeah, I came in here with this idea that he was guilty, but now I'm not so sure. And him being willing to say, yeah, I think I was wrong, and I'm gonna switch over. He was the first one to go over to the other side, wasn't he?
Yeah, he said he didn't he wasn't totally sure
Right.
when he voted not guilty, but he wanted to hear out this guy because he recognized that the holdout was
That there was
putting himself on the line, sort of.
right, and that he was making some points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He realized the stakes of it. And there's even a line he talks about, like, how great your country is that you get to perform a civil duty like this, where you get to really think about and help people.
Right.
That's not exactly how he said it, but
Essentially, like, everybody is burdened by being there, and he's actually proud to be there. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
he's happy to be there and happy to be working in democracy. I don't know, like, how many people who are immigrants to America. But immigrants tend to have this entire different perspective on America and what it means, what it means to participate in democracy. And it is, it's just skewed from, like, a normal perspective that, like, you and I would have, because we take things for granted
that's what happens when you're born with something.
Right. It's a really kind of refreshing view to go talk to an immigrant, even if you're not 100% like pro-capitalist, and an immigrant's perspective may be, the bootstrap mentality. Even if you're political things don't line up. Like, talk to an immigrant to America, and you do kind of see, like, the potential. Even if we're not living up to it, you see the potential of what we can do here. That other people in certain parts of the world, we live in South Florida. A lot of people from Cuba here, and living under a communist dictatorship is completely different than living in a free market country. Where you have a say in the justice system. Even it's a really kind of refreshing view to have.
Yeah, Canada I think gets that a lot too. They're a similar people come there for opportunity. I feel like this is more my personal take, but it's kind of like the American dream, like that stereotypical. Like I feel like it's kind of shifted into Canada.
I think we feel that way because a lot of Americans talk about going to Canada.
That could be it.
and also in America,
we all threaten to.
I think in America we see, just like immigrants to America see the shiny parts of America brightest. I think we see the shiny parts of Canada brightest without realizing, they have some of the same bureaucratic problems that we do, and some of the same political.
Their history of Native people is
there's dark spots on every.
That's true.
Without getting too off track,
new political podcast launching now.
I'm not speaking as an immigrant. I'm only just perceiving the way I talk to immigrants.
This is civics, like that is kind of
this.
That's the topic here.
This movie could have been made as an educational film.
I think it is.
But I mean, it could have specifically been like, we're going to make a drama that is an educational film. I think this was more just focused to be like kind of a white hat political drama or courtroom drama.
I think if you added in like a wildlife documentary, like voiceover explaining like he pauses and wonders about
if only they could get that fan to work.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good intro to this. Why don't we take a break, and then we'll come back, because there's a lot to pull apart in this movie.
There's a ton.
For a short, I mean, this movie's only like an hour and a half.
Is it?
Yeah, it's not long at all. And it takes place in essentially one room and a bathroom.
It's a bottle episode.
And there's so much in that. So we'll start unpacking it when we get back from break.
All right.
And we are back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Speaking of breaks, like that?
Sure.
I've been working on that one all day.
Maybe you should have taken 2 days.
Wow. Speaking of breaks, I don't know about you, but I didn't realize how into this movie and into the conversation and the arguments I was getting until the jurors would say, let's take a 5-minute break. And then I felt like I was taking a break too. I was like,
right.
You could see them get up from the table and sort of walk it off. And I felt like standing up and walking around. I think a couple of times that's when you and I would exchange a couple words about whatever, just, like you really get into this movie in watching it. And I think that's really like a skill that this movie puts on display.
Right. I think there's 2 separate things. There's like the intense dialogue, and the conversation and really the main meat of the story. But then there's also like this ambiance that's like present throughout the film of just like realism and just like small talk, and it's really interesting to see.
Well, there's like the grit of that room. Like, it's the hottest day of the year, they say.
On the close-ups, you can see them sweating.
Everybody's sweating. Everybody's uncomfortable. Everybody's smoking.
Except for that one calm, collected guy.
That one guy.
I love him.
Which makes it great when he does start sweating near the end. And then even when it starts to rain, like, there's that ambiance in the room too. Like
Right.
everything,
It's a mood shift.
Everything is it is a mood shift, and it's where the plot shifts too.
Right.
But everything is this sort of uncomfortable. This is not some glamorous room in this, the building, the courtroom, this big grand building they show you from the outside, and then this little shitty room with a fan that doesn't work, and it's hot, it's not air conditioned. You know what I mean?
They spend all their money on the courtroom itself, and
Sure.
then this juror's room is just end of the line, kind of.
Right. The actual justice system is displayed as this very prominent, grandiose thing, but the reality of how it works, there's nothing glamorous about it. And I
Right.
think that's the great contrast, and it sets the mood for the whole thing.
I think, like those quiet moments where they take breaks, they're not empty moments. Like
No.
things happen. That's kind of like where the characters let their guard down.
Yeah.
When they're not arguing and their small talk, it reveals their biases. Like I think,
Yeah, that's when you kind of see who they are.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like before they actually start the whole discussion, when the holdout, before he's even the holdout, is just looking at the window and one guy's talking to him and he says something like, oh, I'm glad we got a murder case, like some of these cases can be so dull, like this one's exciting.
Yeah.
And the holdout doesn't say anything, but like you can see in that moment, or at least maybe I'm like putting my thoughts onto his, like what a poor, tasteless thing to say. Like,
sure,
you're gambling with a man's life here, and you're like using it for entertainment.
Everybody's very flippant about all of it. Yeah,
Right.
Jack Warden at the end of the table, the guy in the hat, he's got baseball tickets, and he's
he's in a hurry.
I got to get out of here. I got tickets to the game tonight, and this kind of everybody is inconvenienced by this trial, and he's the only one taking it seriously. And
that can be frustrating. It's like a group project when like you're the only one doing any of the work.
But
a man's life is at stake, so it's more than that.
It is that, but it's also just not just the frustration of being the only one doing the work or the only one taking it seriously, but the peer pressure aspect of it, like to be the holdout, to be the voice of opposition for morality, is almost an un-American thing to be sometimes. Like it is, or it feels that way, to be the bleeding heart. They even call him a bleeding heart in here. They call him a do-gooder.
They insult everyone
as an insult,
right.
and this sort of like, you're not being tough enough. You're not just go along to get along kind of thing.
You and your emotions.
It is, yeah. So I think there's something really great about the bookends of this movie, where Henry Fonda is the holdout at the beginning, and he's very measured, and he's very collected, and very put together. He's very coherent. He's making sound arguments, and he's being courageous in the face of these 11 other people who just want to go home. Mm-hmm. And then it flips, and he gets all but one to his side. And the last holdout for guilty is screaming and ranting, almost violent. He's falling apart emotionally, and just sort of revealing that he just is an angry, angry man who kind of wants to screw somebody over.
Right.
And his prejudices are all coming out. He's angry about his kid, and that, like,
it's such an emotional.
It really is. And I think it's a brilliant way to bookend the deliberation of this. Mm-hmm. The contrast of one against the other. And it, I don't know, just something about that really struck me. It's like, how are you going to behave when you are the voice of opposition?
And it's even like they're the ones calling him emotional when he's the one
Right.
using logic and being like, this is all about whether or not there's concrete proof. And then the other people, the people who are trying to vote guilty, they're all using emotional reasoning.
Right.
They're not using logic.
Or at least a lack of critical thinking. The idea, and this is like still a thing today with like, oh, there's an eyewitness who saw him do it. And, you know, when they really start pushing it, they're like, oh, she was across the street without her glasses looking through an L train.
Right.
Like,
even when there isn't stuff like that, do you know how faulty human memory is?
and that was the other guy, the downstairs neighbor. Like,
right.
The idea of like, maybe he thinks he's misremembering something.
No one's gonna just completely make up a story, but like our memory, our perception of events is not reality.
Right.
No matter how good you think your memory is.
I was trying to think of the last holdout, and that was Lee J. Cobb. That was that guy.
In my notes, I just called him the abuser.
He was right. Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, he talks about his relationship to
his son. But also just in how he treats everyone. He's
he's very bullying. Very kind of like pushes his way through every argument.
Can I go back to you said something about like the peer pressure of being a holdout?
Yeah.
I don't think everyone thought guilty. Like in the beginning, when there's only one holdout, they decide to go around the table and all the people who voted guilty are going to say their reasoning. And a lot of them have reasons, which are circumstantial and brought up from the prosecution, prosecution, whatever.
Right.
They're similar words. And the one guy, who later it's revealed he like comes from the slums too.
Oh, Jack Klugman, yeah.
Right. He says, "Can I pass?" I think, like, I saw that as a sign. He's going along with the crowd. He doesn't even necessarily believe that this is true. He's just going along with everyone else because he doesn't want to be the holdout.
Or he...
Because that's a common thing in crowds, is just going along.
For sure. I think it was a little of that and a little bit of just taking the evidence as presented. He hadn't, broken down I mean, when someone says they saw him do it, and I think that was a lot of them. The smaller dude with Piglet, the guy.
Yes.
And yes, this guy in this actually did play Piglet. Let me find his
juror number 2.
His name, juror number 2, is John Fielder, and he played Piglet in like the 90s and early 2000s in the Winnie the Pooh stuff. And when you hear him argue with other jurors and it's Piglet's voice and you realize that, it is kind of surreal. Like, Rabbit said he saw him stab. But
we can't sentence Pooh to the electric chair. Yeah.
Anyway, I forget where I was going with that, but yeah, I feel like they all eventually start to just think more critically throughout there. But you brought up Jack Klugman and his character, and I was really shocked at how like emotional his character was. Like, he was this very kind of soft-spoken guy who kind of reveals throughout the movie that he comes from a rough neighborhood. And here he is watching people discriminate against this kid because the kid comes from a rough neighborhood.
Right.
And when he finally breaks and throws it out there, and he's like, I came from the slums, and I played in backyards full of garbage and what of it, sort of just kind of calls them out on their prejudice.
Right. You can see him throughout this movie get a little more, like, I don't think cocky's the right word, but like he gains confidence to stand up to these people.
Yeah, cocky's not the word, but yes, he does. You can see he's kind of just quiet. And then the more, I think he gets brought over to that side, and the more he sees other people going to that side, it probably kind of feels a little like a personal victory for him. To the point where he volunteers his knowledge about knife fighting from being in this neighborhood and seeing terrible things. He's like, that's not how you use one of those knives. And I know this. And like, that's like a huge step for him.
Right. To feel validated or caught up enough in this case to be like, okay, I have something to add to this.
Right. Yeah, he's a really great character, I think.
Which, that's actually one of the things, like, the demonstrations that they do in this movie, like, with the stabbing and with the, here's the bed, we're gonna walk and see how long it would take.
Oh, and they measure out the steps. Okay, if he had a bum leg, how long would it take him to get this far?
It adds momentum to the story, and it's captivating,
and it's a visual aid for the audience. That's done
that too.
And it's done in an organic way. It's not like shoehorned in, like, okay, audience, we're going to show you now. It's not a flashback. This movie is a lot of tell, not show. But in those moments, they do just they are just kind of like, yeah, we're going to show you how this works now.
But it's also this movie is a conversation, so that makes sense.
Yes.
It's they do everything in this movie organically. I think the only thing that stuck out is like, oh, this is kind of a movie moment, is when they all turn their backs on the man who is just raving about, oh, poor people they're like this. You can't trust them.
You can't trust them.
They lie. They don't even know the truth.
They all slowly get up from the table, and the other part of that I love is the camera work from that scene. As they're getting up from the table, the camera is pulling away, and the shot gets wider and wider.
Even we aren't giving him the time of day to listen to him.
And at the end of the day, it really shows him alone at the table. Like, it is I think that's where, like, the direction of this movie, Sidney Lumet, who, went on to do all these big movies. He did a movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman, like, right before he died, called Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. It's a super dark, like, crime movie. He did these kind of dark things like Serpico and Dog Day Afternoon. But it's really clear, like, he's pushing a vision, and these details like that, all the way back in the 50s, he's doing this. He's pushing the vision, and he wants to get his point across to you. And the way he does that is atmosphere. And then just this camera work is so weird, but it's so great. Like, remember we kept talking about, like, the old man, the really old man at the table?
The nice old man.
Every time he said something, it was so tight on his face. Like, he's like, listen to this old man. He's like forcing this guy in your face. But everything is so purposeful. Every bit of direction in this movie, there's a point to it.
And I don't bring up that scene as a bad thing.
No,
it's a great moment. It's just the only thing in this movie. It sticks out just a tiny bit because it's the only thing that seems like something that people wouldn't naturally do.
Right. It's like the I Am Spartacus or something like that, where it's like, this only happens in a movie where people gradually, like a slow clap, like this kind of thing. But yeah, I get what you're saying, but I still loved that point. Yes.
Same. Yeah.
It's not real, but it is poignant.
It's pointless to listen to, or to even argue with people with these biases, because they just won't listen to you. So you just have to tune them out, shun them away from the table, and continue your conversation. I don't want to go off on this track, but people
who followed Trump on Twitter and commented and argued, and and I was always of the school of, I don't follow him, I don't see his tweets, I don't want to know the hateful garbage this man is spewing. I'm not giving it the time of day.
It's not even like inherently political. Like I used to have a really bad habit of arguing with like flat earthers or like toxic Star Wars fans online because I just can't help myself.
People hate follow. People have talked about Twitter being a dumpster fire because they hate follow people. And it's like, no, follow your friends and have conversations with your friends.
It's bad for your mental health.
It really, really is. This is sort of like, here we are 50 years before social media. They're showing you, okay, in 50 years when they make a thing called Facebook, this point where everyone gets up from the table and leaves, that's what you all need to do.
If they made a modern version of this, everyone would pull out their phone and unfollow.
Yeah, when they first come into the jury room, they all like, hey, what's your handle on Twitter? And they all start following each other, and then just like slowly.
I know it's a joke, but I know that's a joke, but isn't it illegal? Aren't you like not supposed to say your name? Or is that just like
no? I don't know that you can't say your name. I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to have a phone.
I think there's an anonymity thing.
I think they're not probably released to the public.
Okay.
I don't know if you
because like at the end of the movie they tell each other the name because they're like, now that it's over, they only refer to each other by the number.
Yeah, that is all their character names in this is juror number 1, 2, 3, all the way around.
Which is pretty convenient when you have a movie with 12 characters.
It's pretty wild. It seems lazy, like, oh, they just didn't want to name them, but they gave. I mean, there's 12 distinct personalities in this room.
In the beginning, like, it's when you start off, it's a little hard to tell them apart. Right. But as you go on, it really is distinct. I think the only, like, there's like 2 or 3 guys that are kind of like barely in
kind of anonymous, yeah.
Right.
Kind of, but even those guys, they made look distinct. Like the advertising guy who doesn't say a lot, but he's wearing a dark suit and glasses, you know. But yeah, there's a couple around the table who are just kind of there. Yeah. You know, they weigh in, but they're more to flip flop. There's the 4 older guys, I think, and then everybody else is just sort of yeah.
Well, I think I noticed with the 2 main old guys, there's the bigot.
There's Lee J. Cobb and Ed Begley.
Right.
Which, speaking of Better Call Saul, Ed Begley Jr., his son, is in Better Call Saul.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, Ed Begley Jr. If you want to see, this is completely off topic. Ed Begley Jr. is in, I don't remember the movie. There's a movie, I think it might be like Amazon Women on the Moon, where it's a movie full of comedy sketches. Like it's not it's like the Kentucky Fried Movie or something like that. Where Ed Begley Jr. plays the son of the Invisible Man, and he takes like the invisibility potion, but it doesn't work, but he doesn't know it doesn't work, so he takes off all his clothes and like runs into a bar. He's like moving things. Ooh! Like, it's absolutely just, it's so fantastic. But
that's great.
Every time I hear Ed Begley or Ed Begley Jr., that's what I think of. So, yeah, every time he spouted out how they're all the same, I'm like, your son was naked in a bar. And it is hilarious.
You don't know how to raise your kids.
Anyway, yeah.
But yeah, his character and the kind old man, they're like the opposite of each other. Like one is the wisdom of the story, one is the hate of the story.
Right, one is very kind, one is very hateful. And then the other 2 old men, who was Ed Begley and the old man who's the immigrant. Right. I feel like they were sort of antithesis too, because he was more just like intolerant of they. And this man who was an immigrant who came to be part of the melting pot was sort of like representative of the they. You know, even though he was a European
Right.
White man, he was an immigrant and he was an outsider to America.
The term white is also like
Sure.
at different times we've excluded different people.
Absolutely. Irish,
right.
Italian, Jewish, all of that. Yes.
Right.
There's an ugly history of all of it.
Right. I think he actually is more of a foil of baseball ticket guy.
Oh, wow.
Like, because one of them is like happy to be there, happy to perform his civil duty, and the other one just like they all kind of want to go home, but he's like the most outwardly, all right, I'm just gonna vote whatever, as long as it gets me home faster.
Well, he has that scene with him, and I did want to speak to this a little bit because I feel like he takes it out on hat guy, baseball ticket guy.
Yeah.
And he calls him out and is like, you're just saying whatever everybody else is saying. And he's like, you know, what kind of a man are you, essentially? He says something in that vein.
Right. It's a little accusation.
I don't think it is, and this is where I'm going with this. Yes, it is an accusation, but it's him calling him out on, from my corner, this is what it means to be a man in society. And I understand that's sort of a misogynist or almost anti-man sentiment now, is to define what a man is. Like, and I get that. I go back and forth on a lot of things because in a lot of ways I think I have a lot of traits of like this old school masculinity that still hang around, but without the being exclusionary,
right?
Like, hey, woman, go make me a sandwich kind of thing. Like, I understand like that's, but there's a lot of discussion about like, what is it to be toxic in an old school masculine way? And the Lee J. Cobb is talking about how he doesn't have a relationship with his son because basically he used to beat his son
to make him
a man. And this man, the immigrant, is calling out the other guy with the tickets and saying, "You're not a man because you don't even think for yourself. You're not like." It's essentially saying you're not an adult. You're not strong enough to stand on your own.
You're a child.
To put the man thing on it, it could be man, woman, anything. You're not an adult. You don't have the strength of conviction to actually do this. And
this is about maturity.
I thought this, it's a framed discussion about what a man is, but that's the other spectrum they're defining here. And Lee J. Cobb is at the wrong end of all these spectrums. You remember, like, as the holdout. Remember how I talked about how one is composed, one is falling apart, as defining what a man is. You know, Lee J. Cobb is on the wrong end of that spectrum. And this older gentleman, this immigrant, is saying, no, that's not what a man is. This is what a man is. Think for yourself and make your own decision. This is important. And actually calls him out on it. And I think that's just such a beautiful moment to sit there. Yes, it can be interpreted as he's being insulting and he's accusing him of something, but he's also guilty of it too. He's not being a man. He's not being a grown up. He's being a child who wants to go to a ball game. You know, and I think that's such a great character moment for that guy who gets up out of his chair and just chastises him in front of everybody.
That is a great
for
moment.
Just flip-flopping for the sake of going home.
You've actually made me realize something. I don't know if this is what you meant, but the abuser sort of represents all of the flaws. Like this jury, each one of them has their own flaw, and he is like the culmination of them. Like there's the not wanting to perform your civil duty. There's the going along with the crowd. There's the believing circumstantial evidence. There's your biases are affecting you. And one by one throughout this movie, they debunk all of that in order, and it slowly gains, like, the people who represented that the most.
Right.
They kind of go head on head. And the abuser is, like, constantly, no matter what the topic is, he's like, yes, he's on, like, their side. He's defending these people.
Right.
Even after that's sort of been, like, debunked. And then that's why he ends up being the lone holdout, is he doesn't, now I've kind of lost my words.
He's kind of cut ties with everybody as it suited him throughout the whole thing. And then when he wants them to come back him up, they're like, no, you debunked us and kicked us off to the side. You said that didn't matter. You said throw all that other evidence away.
Yes. He backed himself into a corner, alienating everyone.
There's a great... there's just like a great series of moments of him getting his card pulled, basically. Like, as he's like... that knife's super rare. And then Henry Fonda pulls out a knife just like it and puts it on the table. And all of these little things that he does, and people turn the tables on him. And they're just sort of like, in another movie, this would be the lawyer pulling a surprise on the stand.
Surprise witness.
Surprise witness. And oh my God, they asked the question that led into this. But really, like, this happening in the jury room between jurors, I think, puts that whole other dynamic on it that I think was great.
Right.
Before I lose it, the guy playing the immigrant gentleman is George Voskovec, and he is from the Czech Republic. I mean, he's been dead for 40 years now, but and I think he's just great in this movie.
He is.
Like, in his
he brought charm to his role.
He brings like this almost kind authoritarianism, like a grandfather, kind of like a wisdom, and he's kind of plain like straight to the point, but he's not mean. Yeah, until he gets his patience tested.
Like when he says little things like, I don't think you know what what is it? I
don't know.
Crap. Like, doubt.
Reasonable doubt.
Reasonable doubt. I don't think you know what that term means.
Right.
Because
he's
using it incorrectly. He just says it a little bluntly.
Yeah. He went on... he did a lot of TV. You can see, like, this was a character actor for a lot of years. He was on, like, every show. 135 credits. And... man,
good for him.
He is just, I think, one of the standout characters of these 12. He's one of the big standouts to me, just because I found him, like, so charismatic. He didn't have the biggest role, and he didn't talk the most, but I feel like every time he spoke, it was something important, and he just delivered it really well.
I think the character that stands out the most to me is the calm, cool, collected businessman.
Oh, Kevin Spacey guy. He reminded me of Kevin Spacey so much. Yeah.
Yikes. Let's look into what this guy's done. No.
Let's see. E.G. Marshall is that guy.
Okay. He has the funniest lines in this movie. Like, when the guy asks him if he sweats and he just says no, because he's the only one wearing his coat in this hot room.
Yeah.
Or when the abuser and him are at the water cooler, and the abuser's like, oh, he's trying to get a rise out of me, and he just takes this water and goes, well, it worked, or something.
Yeah.
And then he just walks away. Just casual observation.
Yeah, I didn't realize it until just now. I saw this guy Just a month ago when I was watching National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Oh, I thought you meant like on the street.
No,
I was
he's been dead for 20 plus
everyone
years.
in this movie's dead.
Yes, everyone in this movie is dead. But yeah, he plays Clark's Chevy Chase's father-in-law in National Lampoon's Vacation. He's the president in Superman 2. Man, yeah. All of these guys, tons and tons of credits. These were character actors who worked and worked a lot. So really, I mean, just a stellar cast, I think. Even if we don't remember their names, like I said, we saw them later on in their lives a lot, and
this is out of our age.
It's out of our time period. Yeah. This is ahead of it for both of us. John Fielder, yes, he was in Winnie the Pooh and stuff like that. He was also in a connection to our show. He was in True Grit, not the one we watched, the original one with John Wayne.
Okay.
Where he was Lawyer Daggett, who was played by Tenzin. What's his name?
Come on. Everyone's screaming at us.
What am I forgetting this right now?
The guy, he's in the farmer's insurance
Farmers Insurance
commercials.
Yes.
His most famous role.
Boy, I'm going to have to edit this so much. J.K. Simmons.
Oh, I knew it.
Yes.
It's J.K. Simmons,
J.K.
guys.
Simmons and him played the same role, basically.
Okay.
And J.K. Simmons is a great character actor. He's a lead actor now, but for years he just played those roles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about this movie. Do you have anything else you want to cover? Because I feel like we can get into a lot of stuff here.
I really don't know. I think this movie has it all. I did tell you last night, I think this is one of my favorite movies now. I think it's
like that we've watched or like in the world. Wow.
Like as I was watching it, I think as the credits were rolling, like in my head I was thinking like I would take this on a desert island.
Wow.
Like, this has rewatch value.
That is high praise indeed.
I've only seen it 2 times, so like that could change. I think in order to like rank something among like your top 10 favorite movies, you have to watch it.
You think you got to give it a few years and kind of see how it sinks in?
I'll keep watching it.
No, I think this is a beloved movie. I don't think it's on a lot of people's radar. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think it's a movie that, like, I knew this movie existed. This was the first time I'd seen it. When I was in 9th or 10th grade, I remember reading the play in English class. And I remember the gist of the plot, that it's about swaying people over. And I remember the knife argument, stabbing down with a switchblade.
Yeah.
And
no offense to your English class, but I don't think it had the performances to really cement this in your memory.
We were pretty good.
I take it back then.
But
I think this movie is something that you can't just easily explain to someone like, oh, hey, this movie about 12 jurors arguing. Like, it doesn't sound as good as it is.
Yeah, this is a movie you have to experience to really appreciate what it's about.
And I'm going to make people experience it.
I really hope that people who follow our podcast and want to watch things along with us, I really hope that people seek this movie out and watch it. We talk about recommending things a lot, and a lot of things that I recommend are like, I don't know, I love this movie, but I don't know if I'd recommend it because of this and of this and of this. I don't have a single hang up for recommending this movie. I would recommend this movie to anybody.
I think it's universal.
Absolutely. Even people who don't watch movies, like, like my grandparents, I would have told to say, like,
Or my
see,
brother.
see this movie, or yeah, I think Logan would sit down and I think this is a lot like your 7th grade civics class. Logan would sit down to watch this movie and grumble about it for about 10 minutes. And then he would get done with it.
They'd put the knife in the table and Logan would be like, what?
Whoa. Didn't see that coming. No, this movie...
Poggers.
This movie is I think it's underseen, but it shouldn't be. It is on the AFI Top 100 list, the 2007 list.
As it should.
Is
that the most current? They do it every 10 years, right?
Maybe there is a 17 list. Hold on, let me look. It was number 87.
Is the AFI ranked, or is it? I just thought it was 100 in any order.
No, they rank their top 100 list.
That seems a little.
Well, that's the.
It's really hard to. Sometimes when you're ranking, it's like this obviously goes towards the top, and this obviously goes towards the bottom. But like, maybe you have two that are even. Like, you can't just tie them.
That's the interesting thing. I brought it up before. The podcast Unspooled, where they watched the 100 movies. And that was a thing they talked about a lot, is like, why is this on the list sometimes? Sometimes it would be, why is it this high? And a lot of what they thought it came down to is, who's in the AFI? Mm-hmm. And did they grow up with these movies? You know what I mean? Like, some of them are voters... are, you know, a school of directors like George Lucas and Spielberg and Coppola and all these guys who kind of just vote each other in. And they go, we grew up with John Ford movies, therefore we're putting these John Ford movies in. There's like 10 Hitchcock movies in there. Granted, they're all great films, and I think they all deserve to be on there. But when they go, why is this director on there so many times? They go, because these guys loved Hitchcock. These people who are the voters in the AFI. So I'm sure a lot of them also grew up with this movie, you know, or this was a formative movie to them. They appreciated this. They saw it when it was new.
And sometimes that is a bias coming through, but like, I think this deserves it.
In our discussion last week about whether or not younger audiences are connecting with old movies, seeing as this feels like an underseen movie, and if younger audiences aren't watching anything that wasn't an enormous movie of yesteryear, is this movie going to be forgotten about in 20, 30 years? Will it be knocked off the AFI? And the AFI list is not the be-all, end-all. It's just sort of like...
It's people's opinion.
It is. But will this be knocked off the list and just sort of forgotten to time in another 20, 30 years?
I hope not. I'm going to say something that might be controversial. Okay, like, I'm not a huge fan of remakes, especially if the original is perfect. And this is a movie, like, I would never need to see a remake of this.
Right.
But if it's something that re-sparks interest in it...
Sure.
And keeps it in the mind's eye, then I think that should be done. I mean, they remade this in the 90s.
I think they remade it for TV in the 90s.
Okay.
But... we talked about this a little bit last night, and that this movie feels a lot like a play. I mean, granted, great camera work, great. This is a movie.
Yeah.
But this movie was sort of originally written as a play, you know, the earlier version of it. And then it was this, and then it sort of, you know, a TV version later. And there's something to this where you can kind of go, you can sort of treat it like a play. So it's not a remake as much as, like, you know how a play will get a new cast.
Yeah.
Or a second run. They'll revive it and bring a play back onto Broadway. And then it just sort of is like, it's not a remake, it's just a new life being brought into this story. I think...
Probably the same script even. Like,
Yeah.
I would imagine that the 90s version is the same script. I don't know why they would... change it?
Yeah, I don't know why either. I don't know if there's anything that's inherently 1950s about this movie.
I don't know.
Let's see. Let's take a rundown. Well, there's no more prejudice or racial or socioeconomic.
Yeah, we solved that.
Yep, that's all done. There's no miscarriages of justices or
Oh, we got that.
rushing to judgment over just surface level evidence and eyewitness testimony that's unreliable. So that doesn't happen. There's no poor neighborhoods anymore.
No.
Yeah. Boy, they may have to rewrite this entire thing.
I don't think it's relevant anymore.
Yeah.
I
Well, nobody's seeing baseball, so
that's something.
I mean, yeah.
When this movie was made, what was that the last time the Cubs won the World Series?
No, it was actually before that. It was actually like,
oh my gosh, I knew it was a long time.
12 years before this movie.
Oh my gosh.
But no, yeah, I think this movie, because the story is the important thing here,
right?
And the feeling of a play that this has, I think this movie could easily be remade and just sort of keep it in the public consciousness, and it might spark people. A remake might get people to go, well, I want to check out the old one now.
I think it could be a play.
Oh,
I
it
think,
could
like,
definitely
straight
be a
up,
play.
like, just get a Last Supper style table,
Yeah,
and have them sit there, and
I think
the blocking and everything.
or it could be a play in the round, where
the round,
yeah, like where people sit on all sides of the stage.
right?
But
I've never seen that. Like, I've heard of it.
I don't know if I've ever seen a play in the round either.
I've seen a concert in the round.
Yeah, that's wild.
21 Pilots, they do that a lot.
Oh, cool. But yeah, if you told me that this has been produced on stage, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Right.
I think it's ripe for that. But yeah, I think this is a slam dunk recommendation, and something that I really do hope, just like The Vast of Night or some of these smaller movies that we've seen that we want to spread the word about and we want people to seek out and get a bigger audience. Here's an old movie we've seen, and it's sort of like, please watch this movie.
Right.
Like,
please keep it alive.
Like, let's keep this movie alive and keep people seeing it. It's a great, just a brilliantly written script. It's a brilliantly performed. I mean, it's
our conversation doesn't do it justice.
It really, yeah. Like you said, you can't explain it, but just in the same way I was trying to explain, like, Glenn Ross to you, like, the beauty of that thing is not in, it's not in the plot of it. It's in the fact that it is just scripted so tight and performed so well. It's an actor's showcase.
Right.
And it's just got a brilliantly written script. This is like Glenn Ross without unpunished toxicity and profanity and David Mamet storming onto set throwing things every day. Like, this is just I think it's just a actor's workshop that has a super poignant point to it.
I don't know what won Best Picture in 1957. I don't know what movies came out then, but this deserved to be it.
I don't know.
Are we doing a quick Google search?
I am doing a quick Google search because that's good podcasting.
We'll be right back.
But no, I think this is an incredible Around the World in 80 Days.
I know the title. That's all I can say.
Weird. Yeah. Well, that was in 57. I guess 58 would have been the year this was eligible. So
Forgot it's the year after.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like trying to figure out Super Bowl years. Bridge on the River Kwai. Great movie. It's hard to argue that one. But Hitler only had one ball.
All right.
That's the song.
That's a song?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
You know that That's Bridge on the River Kwai, and the lyrics to that are Hitler, he only had one ball.
Oh my God.
It's, or I guess it would have been
more you
has.
know.
Yeah, you learn something new every day. But yeah, I don't know if this was I don't know if this was nominated for anything. You'd think like
Well, you said it
screenplay.
didn't perform well, so like,
that
that,
does-
does say something.
But sometimes Oscar winners are movies nobody sees. Not for the big picture, but like
Right.
sometimes like cinematography.
Well,
or
don't you still have to kind of like pay to be nominated?
there's a lot of like politics involved.
Right.
in-
I think if your movie didn't make money, I don't think you have much of a chance.
yeah, I don't know. That's a
Well,
really
that's a shame.
It really is.
Another reason why the Oscars are pointless. Not pointless, but like not a determining factor.
This
in
was
brilliance.
This was nominated for Best Picture.
Oh, okay. I don't take back what I said, but that's at least something.
So, yeah. Yeah, and BAFTA Award, Golden Globe, Henry Fonda. Looks like Henry Fonda won.
Standout.
Best Directing.
Oh.
Yeah, I think this got some award attention, but yeah, apparently not much box office attention. But
It happens.
hey, it's not too late, guys. Rent it.
Yep.
Worth it.
Is that all we have?
Yeah, let's close it out there. Otherwise, we'll just keep rambling about this movie. Ironically, we did not become two angry men. We had nothing to argue about this week. We both loved it. What do you got for shout-outs this week?
All right. I have an interesting one that I did not put on our page.
No, you
on
did
our
not.
notes. So we all know the Bernie Sanders meme by now. The picture of him
This will age well.
sitting. I know this meme is gonna die fast, but there's a picture of Bernie. If you haven't seen it, looking kind of grumpy and cold.
Grumpy
at the
old man Bernie,
inauguration. Yeah. And people started photoshopping it everywhere. Well, the Bernie Sanders campaign is selling a sweater with it for $40 made union workers in the U.S.
Yep.
And all of the proceeds are going to Meals on Wheels.
I did hear about this. I think that's great.
I thought it was a great cause and also funny, and
It's why I love Bernie.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
currently sold out, but we're recording this like weeks ahead of
I'm
schedule, so
hoping it
hoping
comes
it's
back
still
in.
available, and yeah,
Yeah, it's great.
check it out.
I have something far more trivial this week in honor of Jack Klugman, who comes up regularly in this group. I am going to shout out the Gravity Beard Interns. That is a Facebook group. Austin and I are both a part of it. It's essentially a fake company. It is a company that doesn't exist. That
What do you mean it's fake?
I mean, it's a real company. We're all interns. It is, as Paul Chomo very poetically put it, it is serious discussions about the dumbest things ever. It is. It's just a lot of fun. Nothing is taken seriously. There's no politics. There's no BS in there. It is just memes and polls and
What's for lunch?
weird food and just anything bizarre you find on the internet usually ends up there, and then we all just pile on and make jokes about it. It's kind of one of the very few reasons I'm still on Facebook at all.
What's your job again?
I am I am the head of security for incidents involving small children and very small adults. And I am also a member of the transportation department. I make videos of driving trucks sometimes and post them in there.
Awesome.
It's all in fun, and one of the few places untouched by politics on Facebook anymore. It's just really a good time.
It is. It does take a lot of work interning there, though. So
But it's a great place to work. I'm
Right.
glad to be an employee there. And I'll just it'll be a direct link to both of these. They'll be in
Yeah.
our show notes when you download the episode. On that note, I want to just say thank you for listening to this episode of The Picture Show with Austin and Phil Rood. If you enjoy our show, please leave a review on your podcatcher of choice. It helps our visibility, and it helps us grow the show.
That's right. Another way to help us grow is to tell people about us. If you tell enough people, we might even be nominated for an Oscar. Who knows?
I'd like to thank the Academy.
The Best Picture Show?
Nice.
Thank you. Yep, that's all I got.
All right. I've got the wheel next week.
What are you making us watch?
We will be watching the Denzel Washington post-apocalyptic action movie, Book of Eli.
That's quite the description.
It's great. It's a favorite of mine. It is about the perversion of religion. It is about losing your way and redemption.
Ooh.
All in a very cool and stylized presentation. I think the Book of Eli is a very underappreciated movie, and I want to
Interesting.
talk about it here. I've not seen it in quite a while. I dug out the DVD today, and yeah, we're going old school DVDs.
Sounds cool. How? When did this movie come out?
I'm gonna say it's 2004, 2005. I didn't look that up ahead of time, but
I just general.
It's not new, but I think Book of Eli is a really interesting movie. So
it sounds interesting.
yeah.
I don't even know what part of that description to like.
There's a lot
so
going
much
on
there, yeah.
but it ties up neatly. I believe Gary Whitta, the sci-fi fantasy author, he wrote Rogue One. I believe he wrote or had some involvement with Book of Eli. I may have to eat my words on that.
Well, either way, now I'm excited for next week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. So I like digging out an old favorite.
Okay.
What do you got for social media?
I am austin.n.rood and austin.n.rood on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram.
All right. Find him. Shout him out.
I wish I could change Twitter to make it easier, but it's
all good.
all right. What about you?
I am philrood.com. You can get my social media handles from there, but the most direct are at philrood on Twitter and at philrood75 on Instagram. You want to read our credits?
Yep. We did everything ourselves.
Well, there you have it. We'll see you next time on The Picture Show.
See ya. Is that good?
That'll do.
That'll do, donkey. That'll do.
You're doing a parody of a parody right now.
And isn't it great?
No.